Hi, and welcome to Chopping Wealth. I'm Brian Portnoy, founder and CEO of Shaping Wealth, and I am genuinely thrilled to have as my guest Saundra Davis. Um, I've known of Saundra for many, many years. We met relatively recently on some sort of group podcast, right? Whatever that was. And was so excited that she agreed to come on the show. So, Saundra, welcome.
Thank you. I have known and followed what you were doing for years also, so I really appreciate this time to hang out with you.
Let's start at the beginning. Tell us where you started. Give us some color on the life you've lived and how you found yourself here in this conversation today.
Oh, Brian, as we've said, oh, the places you will go. So I was born and raised in San Francisco. I am a 65-year-old hippie born right in San Francisco. I'm a San Francisco native. And I had a pretty charmed young life. My mom, I was the baby, the only girl, and so I was spoiled rotten. And then things changed at 15 and a half, 16. So, um, despite being an amazing high school student, one of the few people who actually loved high school, which is bizarre, loved school, I dropped out, took my GED, and joined the Navy at 17. And yeah. So I got out of the Navy 4 years later, did very well, went from E1 to E5. Everything was great, but they wanted to send me somewhere I didn't want to go. And I got out. I had a son, got out of the Navy, broke with a son, and went through a divorce. And I then had jobs. I had some pretty good careers. I had about three careers between 20 and um, 40. Went back to college, did all of the things I wanted to do, working primarily in the low and moderate income communities around Black wealth, not deliberately like this, but helping people navigate bumpy times, right? And I closed down my last company. I was self-employed and I met this amazing man who taught me how to trade stocks. I understood, to learn. I love the Japanese candlesticks. Just loved knowing about them, right? Watching them tick up and tick down. And then I realized what that meant. I'm sitting there watching the screen. I was like, I cannot do this. And then I lost $200. So no.
Good old fashioned loss aversion coming into
Lost
play.
$200, and Brian, that's all it took. And he said, why don't you be a financial planner? And I literally had never heard those words before. Didn't even know it existed. Went and looked at in a bookstore back when you could walk into them, saw a book that said if you're going to hire a financial planner, hire a CFP, or better yet, someone with a master's degree in financial planning. So I went and got a master's degree in financial planning. So I'm now the program director of the program I graduated from. And but I very quickly learned that my knowledge didn't change anybody's behavior, not even my own. Right? There were things that I knew that I didn't execute. And so that was a really big deal for me. That was a turning point, which is how I got into coaching. I focused on the psychology of money, focused on people's why. Um, I'm also a mindfulness practitioner and had been before I became a financial planner. So I integrated mindfulness and self-compassion very deeply into my work. And so, still working predominantly with nonprofit agencies. The idea was when I first started this, the idea when I created the financial planning small business incubator was I joined the profession at 44, old, cranky, not a good candidate to join someone's firm. So I wanted to create a pathway for people who were like me, might come out brand new and have to create their own business because there wasn't a place for us. It's a lot different today than it was in 2006, right? But back then, nobody wanted to hire me, and quite frankly, I didn't want to work for them either. So, um, I started working on coaching and I built this practice. I started in the nonprofit sector. And then I realized that financial planners were grappling with the same thing that folks who are low and moderate income were grappling with. I think everybody thinks it's very different. I'm like the pro bono queen, magazine covers, pro bono planner of the year, all those things. And people thought, oh, that's different. And I knew it wasn't, the dollars and cents were different, but that's really the only difference.
I want to click pretty deeply into the core problem that we're trying to solve, and the different ways in which coaches and advisors can approach the problem. But before I want to ask one historical question, which is what drew you to the military?
Ah, survival, survival. Going from having a very secure and stable life to being unhoused at 15 and a half and to being on my own with no safety net. Um, I knew that I'd get, as they say, three hots in a cot. And so that's what I did. I actually loved it and thought that I would stay in. I don't believe had they given me what I wanted to be stationed in Rota, Spain. And they didn't give me that. They offered me either Okinawa or Adak, a hot rock or a cold rock. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And so I got out. And one thing is there are no circumstances sufficient to keep me from moving forward. There's nothing that can keep me from moving toward what I want. Now, what I want might change, and I don't care about that. The change doesn't scare me, but there are no circumstances that, so even, being unhoused, I got a job at 16 on Hollywood Boulevard, working at a rental place where people call in and we'd give them bad rental information. So, so I needed safety and I was not able to provide it for myself. So I joined the military.
Actually leads well to asking, I think, the foundational question about financial well-being. If that's the term you want to use, financial well-being, financial wellness, but especially with your work in low and middle income communities, your work that falls outside the typical orbit of the big wealth management platforms. I think sort of a fulsome definition of financial well-being can come in real handy here. So how do you let's talk about the problem that we're trying to solve, however you want to define it.
Yeah, so I probably don't have what other people might view as a universal definition because I've experienced people who have very little and live very well. And I've experienced people who have more than they will ever need and for generations to come and are not living well. And so what I define is when people know what they need to know to live well with the resources they have and have the life that they want, both now and in the future. And so, I was telling we just wrapped one of our coach training programs, and I was telling folks that when I first met my partner, we both had we made a comfortable living. Both of us had enough money. We had what we needed. And we met and we were living in the condo that I'm in now that we rented, that I rented before I met him. He moved in with me because I was not very adventurous back then. Um, and then when we decided to buy a home together, I wanted a cupola. I wanted a house, because I thought that mattered to me. So if I were to judge my financial well-being by that aspirational thing, it wouldn't be true. But the fact is, we decided because he said so, and he was right, let's buy this. And buying this condo, which was well beyond, like it was like $163,000 back in 2001, right? This condo has paid for my education. This condo has allowed me to buy a second home. But my point is, the wellness is different today than it was then. But if I had judged my wellness on my aspiration, I would not have felt well financially. And now I understand that it's really relative to what matters most. So when I think about the problem to solve, it's less about do the dollars and cents work alone, or do the dollars and cents work in context of what it means for you to be financially well? Because now I don't do work that I don't love. I don't work with people that I don't want to work with. I don't do anything I don't want to do. Could I make more money? Absolutely. But I don't do anything I don't want to do. And so other people might look at that and say, well, you could. I could. And I have zero desire to do that. So the financial wellness that I have is relative to what my enough is.
How do you have that conversation across the income spectrum? And I want to spend a disproportionate amount of time. I mean, we can go wherever we want, obviously, but it's rare that I have guests on Chopping Wealth that have the breadth of experience that you have in diverse communities, in low and middle income communities, where it feels like our industry pays no mind. Maybe there's a gesture toward financial literacy or a particular program. Yeah, pro bono. And so when we think about, financial wellness in the communities that you've given, such space and grace to over the years, how do you think about it specifically for those communities? Because they're unlike, the folks that, we typically deal with. Putting food on the table is a challenge. Having a roof over your head is a challenge. Being even able to think about the future is a challenge because you're solving all of the problems of today. And so, financial wellness for these sorts of communities, maybe you can elaborate what your experience has been and how those conversations go. Because I'm imagining, and I'll let you speak after I try to frame this in my head, which is that, we think elaborately in sophistication about financial advice. People just need money to pay the bills. That's a very probably different conversation than the one most are having in our industry.
It's kind of the same and different because people want what they want, right? So folks who have abundant resources want what they want. And folks who have minimal resources, they want what they want too. And what they want might be different. What they perceive is available to them might be different. But most people want to be happy and feel loved and have options, you know? And so people who have less, what is different is not only do I have to consider what matters most to them, but also what they have access to. And are there external forces that are financially oppressive? Right? So when we talk about a neighborhood that's a food desert, or a neighborhood where there's no bank, the only place you can cash a check is at a payday lender's. So that's an access issue. That's an external issue. And we often characterize the choices people make in that environment as a character flaw. Well, I mean, there was a period of time it was like, well, why do poor people have refrigerators? Well, yeah, there's been conversations like that, right? Why are they taking their kids out to McDonald's? Why are they, buying Jordans for their kids' shoes? Um, if I believe that I'm never going to have what I really want, which is to own a home with a yard and my kids can play outside, why would I not enjoy McDonald's with my kids? Why would I not have a big screen TV that we can sit around with some popcorn that we make in our own microwave and have family night? Why would I not do that?
Well, I wanted to bring up this continuum of financial well-being. It seems like the perfect attachment point here. And I loved when I read it because I've thought about this, but you put it in such a concise way. And it's sort of a ladder or a cascade of engagements with people with regard to their financial well-being, creating some nuances along the way. Do you want to detail that?
Yeah, yeah. So what happened was back in about 2007 when I first really started getting into the coaching in a robust way. Um, I was getting a lot of input from planners and counselors to say, oh, well, is this better than planning? Is it better than coaching? And my point, and the reason that I did this in this way was that I wanted people to consider that it's all of that, right? So from a professional perspective, I can be a financial educator where I'm really focused on that transfer of information, that transfer of knowledge. Do people know what they need to know to have or achieve financial wellness, right? Do they know what they need to know? And then the counseling piece of do they have access to what they need to have access to be able to achieve it, right? So are banking products available to them at a reasonable cost? Is insurance reasonably accessible? Do they understand what estate planning is? And what if they're in debt? Do they have what they need? And then coaching is really about coaching the person rather than the topic. So as a coach, I coach the individual, and the individual navigates their topic, right? I'll say more about this later, but that's the piece, right? And then a financial planner, of course, that comprehensive picture. Does everything line up to point you in the direction of what you say you want? And if it doesn't line up, where do we need access points? What adjustments might we need to make? And then, of course, therapy, which in 2007 we didn't have names for. I think people were doing it around the country, but everybody thought that they had made it up, and there really wasn't a word for it, right? So I'm one of the founding members of the Financial Therapy Association. So when we all got together, we gave it that name, right? And so then that aspect of, you know, are there things that are diagnosable? Are there things that are beyond the person doesn't have the will, or the person so what I was hearing so often that made me go here was financial planners who were saying, I fired the non-compliant client. And my inquiry was, so is that client better off with or without you? And I understand the reasons that financial planners might say, I can't put myself at risk, and am I really helping the client? I get it. And the question remains, if not you, then who? And so that was the point of us having this frame of reference, that there's no wrong door, right? Someone can come through an education workshop who actually learns, wow, I really need a financial planner, and there's one that's available to me. A counselor might say, hey, we've worked through your budget, we've dealt with the debt, and now, let's look towards retirement planning, and let me connect you with a financial planner. A coach might say, what I'm noticing is there's a gap between what you know and what you do. What do you think that gap is? And how do we navigate that? And if I'm working with a client, that there is something diagnosable, right? That hoarding or overspending or any of those things is more than forward thinking, right? What is holding them back is truly holding them back, and it's out of my scope of practice, then a financial therapist might be the best choice for them. And all of us, wherever, of whatever ilk we might be, can learn together and with each other. You might have a financial planner that does offer some education. You might have a coach that says, I know you know this thing. Do you really? So there might be a need for us to collaborate in ways that one client interacts with all of those interventions. So it can be practice focused. I want to be a coach. I want to be a planner, or it can be client focused. I need any one of those things. So that's what I was hoping to accomplish.
Yeah, roles versus functions. I want to be a planner. I want to be a coach, but then the client needs planning. The client needs coaching. I'm just going to play these back because, I've thought about this for so long, but it's just so crisp. Financial education, financial coaching, financial counseling, financial planning, financial therapy. It's such a simple but robust map on how we attach to the needs of others and help. Do you think what? So I've a few things that came to mind as you were kind of walking through the framework. The modern financial planning industry, fee-based, where they use terms like mass affluent, which is code for barely enough money to work with. But really, if you don't have at least a few hundred grand, if not $1 million in the bank, then that fee-based service, it might not map to the service model that a traditional planning firm would like. And there's a lot of, we've both been to a million conferences. There's discussion and debate around, okay, well, how do we change the business model to be more inclusive? Actually, what I thought about when you were, sort of elaborating was, is that maybe the wrong way to frame the question? Is it that, well, the modern industry, and I'm talking about the mainstream fee-based industry, should do what it does and not try to morph into something that it's not. And then we try to sort of build and underwrite resources in these other buckets that can show up because, like I don't think I've done as much as you, but I've done a fair amount in the financial literacy space, youth financial literacy. Attaching a little bit to lower income communities here in Chicago. And the idea of any of these folks having a financial planner is ludicrous.
Ludicrous and necessary, right? Because the thing is here, and this is what I think people miss. We think that because people have less, they need less. That's not the case. People who have less need another way. They still need. So this is what made it the sweet spot for me in the nonprofit sector. This is what made my work um, shift the trajectory from poor people need to budget better, they need to focus on their needs versus their wants, they need to get debt free, and they need to increase their credit score. That was it. When I started in this field, that was it. There was not a conversation about insurance unless it was from an insurance salesperson. There was not a conversation about estate planning unless they were trying to extract the grandma's house from the family who had inherited. There certainly wasn't a conversation about retirement projections or anything like that. Investments beyond the Gerber baby account, right? So, and people thought that that's all they needed. The problem was they always needed more than that. We just were ignoring that need because they couldn't pay, right? I remember being a young person watching the insurance lady come to our house and collect $20 every week for the insurance policy on the parents and grandparents, right? Um, so most of those services have been extractive for people who are low and moderate income. You might spend $20 a week on a $10,000 life insurance policy when it costs $25,000 to bury someone, right? And so that's what was there. Um, we had one situation where there was a person at a nonprofit I was working with um, that was working, low income, made enough to survive on, was partnered with someone that he was not married to. She had a son and she had inherited a home. And the home she inherited, she was not employed, was $35,000 in back taxes. He was paying the tax bill. So I don't have to tell y'all the number of problems,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Wow.
right? It's a case study that we could all.
No, no, you could just see it.
Exactly. And in California, in San Francisco, right? This is a home that is valuable. The child is expected to inherit. It was a 14-year-old kid, right? And so there's just so many issues there. But we assume that because this dude is a contractor who was making maybe 80,000 a year, this was in 2004 or 5, all he needed was a budget, a debt payment plan, and to get his credit right. And so we're missing that the need does not change with income. Does it change with wealth? Yes, but it doesn't change with income. People who are low and moderate income, the mass affluent, need possibly even more planning because they don't have the moves to make. They don't have the mistakes to make. So I would contend people who have less actually need more comprehensive planning than people who have multiple safety nets and multiple options.
So Sage Financial Solutions, you haven't mentioned that yet, but tell me about what you've built and the work that it does.
Yeah, so we started as a nonprofit small business financial planning incubator. The heartbreaking aspect of this was that I was only funded by two organizations. One of them was actually the CFP board. So they funded me, and what I was doing was building. I don't know if you all are familiar with business incubators, but you have a place that you can go, and of course it was in downtown San Francisco, where you can go hang out your shingle and work. And we had everything there from paper clips to toilet paper. And you could, and I was using a space within a nonprofit agency, so that's where the incubator was. And as you were learning, you'd completed your financial planning education and were working toward getting your 3 years of experience to fulfill your CFP board requirements for experience, right? So back then, that's what it was. And so we had about 3 good years of getting it together and starting to have people come through. Where they got their experience was doing pro bono planning for people who were part of this organization that I was affiliated. And so, um, but no one wanted me to pay the planners. And these are new financial planners who needed to make a living. And so literally no one, not even our beloved foundations in our field, would fund me because I was paying the planners. And then of course, like any other nonprofit, if you don't have the money to pay the people, you can't do what you plan to do. So then I pivoted, as I've done so many years, no, so many times in my life, to training people who were already in the field. So I was training nonprofit staff to use these skills. So um, by then I was, pushing 50, right? So I knew that I could not meet the demand. I could not meet the need, and I had to turn the need into demand. So there was two pieces to that. So I started training folks to use coaching skills so that we could stop shaming, blaming, and abusing people who, yes, their behavior might not have been in alignment with what they said they wanted. That was true. And there were also external forces that were getting in the way of their financial well-being. So rather than beat people over the head with our budgets, how do we meet them where they are truly? How do we truly meet them where they are? And that's where the coaching came in. That's where I became an expert coach, a coaching expert, and started training. And so I've been doing that. Now I've trained more than 2,500 people, probably even more than that. You know how you get one of those numbers and you just kind of keep saying the number when it's way beyond that?
Thousands. You could say thousands.
Thousands. I've trained thousands of people. I had a cohort in India, a cohort in Ghana. So we've trained folks internationally. Um, and the main thing that I have wanted is at first, and this started with the nonprofit sector, I wanted the professionals who were helpers to first live well, right? So often, the vicarious trauma of being in financial distress yourself as a nonprofit staff member, and then navigating day after day after day, struggling with serving people who are unhoused, um, grappling with all kinds of issues, the trauma of that on top of experiencing it yourself, because most people in the nonprofit sector were similarly situated to the people they were serving in their financial lives. So I wanted them to be well. And then I started hanging out with financial planners and learning financial planners weren't that well either. They were being kept, they might be making good money, but they were suffering too, non-compliant clients that were stressing them out, s- and then when the markets would tank, financial planners were just in distress. And so I started helping them navigate what it means to be a helper, what it really means, the toll that it can take on you, and how do you uh, be well while doing good.
So I'm so glad you raised this. I was actually planning on leaving it for a little later in the conversation, but let's zero in on it. I'll say with pride that the topic of advisor well-being has been central to what we built at Shaping Wealth. Joy Leary, in particular, who's a wonderful friend and wise empath, has really taken the lead on creating content because content engagement and counseling, and we could talk about the line between therapy and therapeutic in a moment. It's important, but it appears to us that globally, because we do have clients all over the world, and our clients are financial advisors, that there's a low-key mental health crisis.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
The number of tasks that everyone's engaged in has grown, and the percentage of those tasks that have more of an emotional or psychological component are increasing. And there's no Kevlar vest that protects you from the emotions that get exchanged in that. And so we see um, privately, sheepishly, maybe even with a little bit of shame, that folks are struggling and they can't talk to anybody about it. I do think there might be a little bit of progress on the margin at some big firms that have recognized this, but not a lot. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more for the mainstream financial planning industry, where you see the the key stressors and needs for a focus on well-being and how organizations can build a culture where it's understood that helpers need help.
Yeah, yeah. So first of all, I see this like across the board of every field where helpers, you might be familiar with the notion of Chiron, the wounded healer, right? I think many people who come into this field come in because they have a heart for doing well for people. And I think that many people associate doing well by how much wealth we have. And my experience is financial planners who grapple with this over identify their true responsibility to the client's well-being. What I find is when financial planners come to me or they come to my training or whatever, it is usually because they have taken ownership of the client's well-being. And I would contend that the only ownership that we can own is our own, right? Anybody that's ever raised a teenager knows you can't make somebody do anything that they're not ready to do. And readiness is relative. You know, I might be ready for one thing and not ready for another. I might be ready to navigate my debt, but yet not ready to face my retirement projections or my retirement plan. So readiness means different things. What I notice in financial planners is that I don't think financial planners really understand the magic that they do. Financial planning, in my mind, is one of the few roles where you actually can change the past and the future, right? You actually can impact how generations, you can heal the generational wounds, the legacy burdens from the people that left them with you, right? And you can change the trajectory for the future. So by me healing me, by me understanding, my mother was very, very poor, right? She was raised very, very poor. By the time she had enough money to make choices, she didn't know how to keep it or build it. And she taught me the same thing. I didn't know how to keep it or build it. I taught my son the same thing. He didn't know how to keep it or build it, even after I got my master's in financial planning, because the wound was deeper than the well, right? And so, what I think financial planners sometimes miss is where they're over overrepresenting what they can actually do in the life of a client. And I believe that that causes them deep and abiding pain in ways that they may or may not face. And I think that that's why many of them feel shell-shocked when they've worked with a client, they've done all the things, they've asked the right questions, they've done the stuff, and then the client doesn't implement the plan. And I do think that matters to them. I think that they care about not just, did I get my AUM? They care. And I think that when that doesn't go the way that they anticipate, and they've tried all the things, I think that they do shame, blame, and abuse themselves.
Why do you think when does advice or guidance stick and when doesn't it?
It depends, it depends. I told you, my partner and I bought this condo 20 years ago. I knew I needed a trust. I needed a trust 20 years ago. Want to know when I got the trust? 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, Dr. Heal Thyself, right?
Hey, and so I think one of the reason I doubled down on coaching as opposed to therapy, planning, or any of the things is because I am comfortable being with that client no matter where they are in the change process. And I don't take responsibility for where they are in the change process. I don't need them to be anywhere other than where they are. And I'm with them and we go and I hold up the mirror and I ask questions and I challenge them um and I don't judge them. And so they get to be honest. They get to be true to what's happening in that moment with why they're not XYZ or why they are XYZ. Um, and that's why I teach coaching, because financial planners can unburden themselves and still be excellent at what they do.
And how do you approach clients that appear consistently to be uncoachable? They seem uninterested in the process of self-awareness to drive self-regulation.
Yeah, they don't have to be. They don't have to be. The client gets to be wherever they are. But as long as they're coming to me, there's something. If they're still coming, there's something. And so we're going to stay with that. We're going to stay with that. I'm working with a client right now that I truly believe what they need more than coaching is therapy. I think they have a thing happening that is out of scope for me. And the interesting thing is when I say that to them in a week or so, they're going to say, "Well, we really want to stay with you." And I will say, "Yes, and yes, and I am not going to leave them if they don't want to be left." And one of the conditions of us continuing to work together is, they're going to have to make a decision about this thing, their communication with each other, right? And so the only way for that to happen is for us to reach some kind of agreement because I have boundaries too, right? And so I think often financial planners don't have a boundary until it's crossed, and they don't know what it is until it's crossed.
Yeah, yeah, they feel it. They know it's there, but it's like I think that's generally true in life. You kind of don't know it's there until you cross it. Something feels different,
Yeah.
and then you have to reflect.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes they don't want to reflect because I think that sometimes they take it as a personal failing because I think they over identify and what's the word I'm looking for? They believe they can change someone else's behavior until it becomes evident that they cannot.
Right, right. So let's coach. Noun versus verb. I want to coach. I want to be a coach. I think that, and I'm talking my own book here because I travel the country, the world, talking to financial advisors about the grand evolution of the industry. I call it the 50-year arc from Gordon Gekko to Brene Brown.
Okay. Okay. So can we use somebody other than Brene?
Of course we can. Is that because you disagree with her or she's oversighted? Or I'm just curious.
I think that we need some, I think we need some perspective that might be a little different. I don't know who. I don't know who. Let me ponder that. But
That's fine. It's a colorful metaphor that has two alliterative names.
yeah, oh, there we go. Okay, well, let's go with that then. I actually like that. I'm all about alliteration.
Yeah, yeah. So there's just sort of, I think, a trend toward leaning in towards something that might vaguely be called coaching. So I think modern advisors know that they're going to not only retain and please, but also attract new clients if they can have better conversations about the things that really matter, and that those do take on a bit of a coaching quality to them. I guess how would you, as you know, our audience here is mostly financial advisors, there's a real sample bias. They're going to probably be open to a conversation about coaching, but they want to lean in further. They want to think about kind of what is this set of practices. What would you sort of identify as the core set of mindsets and skills of what it means to be a coach in the financial space?
Yeah, so interestingly, the coach world occurred because of a financial planner, right? So Thomas Leonard, back in the 80s, knowing that his clients needed more than technical support and they were not in need of a therapeutic approach, um, started coaching. And he actually is the reason we have the International Coach Federation. He is the reason that we have the first life coaching school, Coach U. And so, interestingly, financial planners tend to um, think that Coaching is not for them. The clients come to them because they want the answer. Um, and yes, and right? People want an answer, and they more often than people like to admit will not do anything with the information that is given to them. Um, so when I say coaching, I am referring to the International Coaching Federation model of what it means to be a coach, which means the coach doesn't have an agenda. The coach's only agenda is the client's agenda, which is hard for financial professionals who give a plan, right? Now, I think financial planners benefit from the coaching approach, which is client-led and client-driven. That doesn't mean that you don't still offer the plan. It just means how you offer the plan and whose lead are you following. Are you here and the client is here and you're telling them what they should do, when they should do it, and how they should do it? And if they don't do it, and I think more now than 20 years ago when I started, more financial planners are having um, real conversations about emotional regulation, well-being, and all of those things. But I think discovery still means data gathering. Some people might do it separately. Data gathering is absolutely necessary, and it also can give us evidence of clients' sticking points. And I think that coaching skills can help financial planners um, build their intuition when a client's process is bumpy and not linear. When a client isn't following the plan or is ambivalent about a plan, coaching skills can kind of allow us to unpack it in a way that is not judgmental and that truly follows the client's energy. Like where does the client have energy around this? Like when my financial planner has actually been in your community. My financial planner saw me hire her, get excited about working with her, and absolutely dip in my follow through. So she stayed connected, not pushy. I think it took me like two months to actually do anything once we had them right. I knew what to do. Yeah. And so she stayed in touch enough that I didn't lose focus and I didn't feel pressured. Had she pushed a little more, I would have pulled back. Had she been hands-on, I would have pulled back even more. So she was intuitive enough to be able to stay in the dance with me. And that's what coaches do really well. We stay in the dance with the client, right? We're in the cha-cha with them, not trying to get them to, right? So the coach doesn't have an agenda other than the client's agenda. So yes, I'm in the dance with them in service of the thing they told me they want. So I'm not ignoring that change must happen because they wouldn't be coming to me if there wasn't a gap between where they are and where they want to be. They're with me because of that. So, but this in between is a cha-cha. So we do it together. I'm not trying to do this. We're doing this together. And that means I have to be very real with what I can offer, and they have to be really real with where they are. And it truly is sometimes some steps forward and some steps back.
Where does technical expertise fit into this? I mean, your world and my world, it is leaning heavily into coaching, into that collaborative approach with the client, following their lead, but also giving guidance along the way. But money's complicated. Mortgages and stock markets and cryptocurrencies and sort of consumer product or financial consumer products that can fill a Costco or a Walmart. I mean, just a complete overwhelm. I mean, for as much as we distinguish between mechanics and guides, between technical expertise and technical experts and coaches, so in the coaching context, when does that guide who understands, does the cha-cha as you've been talking about, actually step in and say, wait a minute, there's probably a right answer here. And let me tell you what it is, slash convince you of what it is, browbeat you with what it is, but like how does that, speaking of dances, we'll come up with something other than cha-cha, but that dance inside the head of the advisor, coach, planner, whatever, how does that work in your experience?
Well, this is one of my favorites because this is where I really frustrate financial planners. So for me, if you call yourself a financial coach, you must be an expert in financial personal finance and an expert at coaching. Anybody, I mean, we know our field. Anybody can call themselves anything, right? I have the same issue around financial therapist. I have very dear friends and colleagues who call themselves financial therapists who don't have an MFT, an LCSW, or none of the W's, none of the T's, none of the W's, right? That does not um, that does not meet what I believe is the standard that we should be holding for the client public, for the consumer public. Um, I'm a financial behavior specialist. I'm level 2 trained in internal family systems. I have taken more therapeutic model courses than most people have, and I will never call myself a therapist because I am not one. I am a financial coach. I have a master's degree in financial planning, so I can deal with the soft, so they call, of financial topics. I call those soft because they're actually easier to define than the coaching skills or the therapeutic skills. I believe those skills are actually harder than the financial topics. A budget is a budget is a budget is a budget. But in my world, um, to be a financial coach, you are both an expert in financial topics. Now, there are people who call themselves therapists who only focus on financial mindset. There are coaches who only focus on mindset. Does that make you a financial coach or a financial therapist? In my world, no. Do do they can they hold themselves out their way? Absolutely. I have no regulatory powers. I have no magic wand that says in order for the consumer public to know what they're getting, be honest, be transparent, be what you say you are, do what you say you do. That would be my preference. But that is not how it is. People can call themselves a financial planner with zero financial planning uh, expertise.
So is it your view that for those who genuinely want to be a financial coach, who lean into that title in one way or another, they need to do the work?
I believe
It,
so.
it can't be, I'm a people person. I'm intuitive. I know where people are coming from. Well, I hear this all the time. You know, we get all the time. Well, why would want training in the soft skills? I get along with people and my clients don't leave. So clearly I'm already good at it.
Build trust because they don't know the difference between trust and rapport. What you have is rapport. You don't have trust. You have rapport.
What is the difference? So what's the difference between trust and rapport?
Well, first, I believe trust is built over time. I don't believe you can build trust in the discovery meeting or the data collection meeting. I believe you can build rapport. Um, for me, the main difference is, does that client know what they can expect from me? And I deliver what they can expect. And if I don't deliver what they expect, I I know how to at least offer repair of the rupture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Trust can come back from a rupture. I'm not sure that that's so true for rapport.
The work that you've done in internal family systems is fascinating. The whole field, which I'll admit I don't know terribly well. You and some others in the space have led me to learn a little bit, but maybe you could share why that seems to pop up a lot in sort of the work that you do. It's a fascinating field. Tell us about why it's been impactful for you.
I'll tell you what about it resonates with me. First of all, I believe it is a fundamental spiritual way of being, right? It is this acknowledgement that who I came into this world as, what they call self-led, be self energy or the self there. So the idea is their self, right? Which is that wisest, part of us that we came here as, right? That when we came through the womb, we were this. In coaching, that would be resourceful, whole, and complete, everything I came here with. And then there are parts, and those parts are protector parts. And those protectors can be managers keeping everything organized, or they can be firefighters that come in and shut stuff down if the person is activated. And then there's the exiles. And the exiles are, they're called that because it's that part of us that was wounded, usually young. It's often a young one, so one of my exiles is that 15-year-old kid who went from being super protected in the family to what the heck is this? I'm out on my own, right? So I know I'm aware of the parts. So the idea of IFS is that we are all a multiplicity of parts, and that, and I suspect you know this, but I'm saying it because this is why it matters to me. There have been instances that have happened in my life that caused me to feel broken, right? Things that happened that caused me to feel broken, that caused me to feel detached from my deepest wisdom. Um, and what got me, I resisted IFS for a long time. We have a colleague that would tell me about it. I'm like, dude, keep it. I ain't interested. I don't want to know. Number one, I'm not particularly fond of the dude who wrote it down. I won't say created it because it was not a creation. It was something that already existed. So, so I was not, and so what one thing that was said in a training that I was in is that the self, who we are, cannot be destroyed or damaged. So what resonated so deeply with me for that is a lot of things have been done to me, deliberately intended to break me. And that cannot be touched. So when I think about my eternal optimism, when I think about the fact that I get up every day and do my thing, right? Irrespective of what else is going on in the world, that is a reminder. And then the last part of it that resonates so deeply with me is that none of the parts are bad. So that part of me that will come in and shut stuff down is there to protect me, not to harm me. Because I can clap back. My clap back game, if somebody comes at me crazy, I can back them up. Right? And so in coaching even, there'd be this notion of, oh, the saboteur, the inner critic, and you got to suppress those things and get rid of those things. IFS says, you know what? All of those things are there to help. Your inner critic is there to help. It's not there to harm you. That part of you that believes you're not good enough is not there to harm you. It is there to help you. And if you learn what it's trying to help and who it's protecting, you can have a different relationship with that part of you. So that's what resonated so deeply with me. That's the reason I've done, at this point, level 2, and I've been a program assistant multiple times because I'm not at war with me anymore. I'm not at war with me for my edgy side. Even if I don't like the way that part expresses, I no longer don't want my inner critic. When you say that imposter syndrome, well, that's a part. It's just a part. And I can learn what that part is trying to do, and I can uh, put those pieces back together in a way that I can speak. And this is my last thing I'll say about this: speak for that part rather than from that part. So my wound doesn't have to be how I respond. So it's very similar to the notion of, when we're triggered, are we reacting or responding? So I think that's the main thing that makes it resonate with me.
Is IFS in the context of financial coaching and financial planning in or out? Meaning you either lean in and you learn it because it's a sophisticated, maybe even dangerous tool if used improperly, and therefore you have to take it seriously like you would a scalpel? Or is it something that, as people listen to this, they've maybe never even heard of IFS before, that they could say, huh, that's really interesting. I'd like to integrate maybe just a macro insight from the way IFS have shown up in the world so that I could just have a better conversation with my clients. I'm not going to take the time to do a program. Where would you land?
The benefit of programs can be learn and test. If if I just if I just hear, read a piece of something, and then I run off and try to deploy it, I might not know that I'm harming. So the lovely part about taking, and the reason I take all of these courses is so that I can take in something that it might be new to me, play with it in a safe place, and then determine how I'll use it. I know a lot of therapeutic models, but I'm not a therapist. Now, what IFS as an institute has done recently that some people are very unhappy about, but that I think was the right thing to do, was now they only allow therapists to become certified. They only allow therapists to become level one trained and all of that. They're doing something for coaches, which, quite frankly, I'm not so impressed so far because they're not using real coaches in the way that I think that they should. Completely biased on my part. Um, Even with coaching, you just going out like reading a book. There's some great books, Marcia Reynolds has Coach the Person, not the topic. Um, Michael Bungay Stanier has The Coaching Habit, right? So there's some good stuff um, that you can learn, and learning without practicing in a safe way, so that if you inadvertently open something that you are ill-equipped to navigate, you at least know how to bring that client back to stable. You're not like they're not out there with their guts on the floor. And I think that's true of any therapeutic approach. Can coaching skills help you listen better and ask better questions? Absolutely. Can you learn those and then go do them? Sure. Will they be as valuable without understanding how it facilitates or inhibits change? There's that chance. I mean, one thing Ted Clont says, and Ted was one of my earlier teachers, um, that we're never having a neutral interaction with the client. We are either moving them toward or away from change. And so we can have a conversation that we're trying on a new skill and actually have the opposite effect of what we're thinking. So, does everybody have to go get a certification? No. No. Can you take a class where you learn a thing and practice a thing and find out your bumpy places? I think there's value in that.
This hour has blown by. Um, Let me ask you to opine and dream, but also just direct. You've such a beautiful and comprehensive view of what it really means to help drive financial well-being for others. And so when you think about the industry, and I won't define it as mainstream, broad, high income, low income, whatever, if you could wave a magic wand and say, there's one or two innovations that I would like to be sort of just well accepted across the board. Because look, we still got hard charging brokers. We got guys in, who are selling junk, and we've got financial therapists, whether they're trained in therapy or not, and everything in between. So when you think about this is sort of a J.S. Mill type thing, like or actually Bentham, sort of the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Where should the industry lean in?
Everyone should advocate for guaranteed basic income. Every financial professional should advocate for all people to be able to live and to be able to feed their family and to be able to have a home. Um, we are we are creating a lot of suffering in our way of doing things. There was a time that, I mean, even in my lifetime, where people could live on one income. A family could survive on one income. And people could be there with their children and actually raise them and actually sit down at dinner with them. Um, and people are suffering now. And suffering does not get masked by money.
Saundra, wow. I could talk to you a lot longer. I am going to talk to you a lot longer, probably just not on this recording. But how can people find you and your work?
Yes, so sagefinancialsolutions.org. We are a nonprofit, so that org matters. Um, and I think, don't make me lie after all we've been through together, but I think that there's a donate button. If you care about people, we have what we call equity pricing for our training programs. And I'm not, having been a development director in the past life, I don't do a very good job of letting people know that if you want to support the work that we do so that we can make our work accessible for people who want to serve low and moderate income clients and cannot afford to take the training, it's helpful to do that. I'm also at Golden Gate University. I'm the program director there. And I'm on LinkedIn. I mean, people can find me pretty easily.
People know who you are.
Yeah, I'm kind of easy to find whether you want to or not is the key. Um, and then I guess the last thing that I just want to say to your audience is just, holding our clients with compassion starts with self-compassion. We are more likely to be good to other people when we are being good to ourselves. So if you're holding yourself harshly, um, sit with someone who can be there for you in the way you try to be there for others.
Amazing. Saundra, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great.
And for everyone, this has been Chopping Wealth, one of my favorite things that we do here at Shaping Wealth. As always, I'm Brian Portnoy. We will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much.